stream last week, and I was also really late in sending an update about that. There was a pretty big family emergency that came up, but hopefully everybody is able to tune in still and, you know, forgive me for my trespasses as far as terrible scheduling lately. It's been a tough couple of weeks, and as you can tell, I'm kind of under the weather tonight, so I'm going to do my best to stay uh, vocal, let's put it that way, and we'll keep working with the stream, make sure everything runs correctly from now on as far as scheduling, or at least giving you an update if I'm not going to be able to make it that night a lot earlier in the evening. But welcome back to our stream. If you don't know me, I like to stream about board games. I have a regular show that I do on Saturdays with some friends, table flipping games, and we play on Tabletop Simulator, a lot of really popular board games, really cool board games that maybe not a lot of people know about. We're currently playing through Pandemic Legacy, so feel free to join us there. It's a pretty exciting time. And then on this stream, I decided to start something a little different, which was to take a look at some really cool board game adaptations that are happening in the digital world. And or games that were inspired very much by board game form, which I've been looking at Slay the Spire in that regard. My biggest adaptation that I've been streaming is Lord of the Rings card game, and I am planning on getting back to that. I'm still figuring out exactly how I'm going to play the new content. I didn't want to overdo it as far as Lord of the Rings or repetitive questing. So I am going to try the quest solo, I think, because of the fact, yes, new game, Joe. I am going to try some of the questing by myself, maybe so that we can at least see the story and the cutscenes. Because I know when Joe and I play cooperatively, it can be kind of a longer night, and so it might be easier for us to kind of speed through that. So I might play the quests right solo so that we can see the story right before we play it multiplayer. And so that's kind of the schedule I'm thinking of, and I might get started on that very soon with at least the first quest trying through. But tonight I'm going to take a look at a board game adaptation. This is definitely one that has been adapted from the board game world. It was a very huge game in the board game world, and just recently got adapted. And I will say it has kind of got a little bit of mixed reviews. I don't really, I mean, I see and I understand what the negative reviews are, although I think that just the fact that this game has been adapted into a digital format is pretty flawlessly and pretty amazingly should be a huge benefit in comparison to maybe some of the smaller setbacks that a lot of people were upset weren't integrated. And what's even funnier is some of the things that were the biggest complaints, like for example the draft variant in this game, were quickly integrated by the company. And so really there isn't much that I think is wrong with this game. Board game wise, this is how much I really like this game. It is a competitive game, very much competitive. Everyone's on their own. There's no teams, no teamwork. But even though it's competitive, it's one of my favorite games. It's definitely my favorite competitive game, and I've played it probably more than I have any other competitive game that I can think of recently. And that game is Terraforming Mars. The game itself was created in physical form. I'm trying to think of the name. By Fricks Games. But it was created in digital format by Lucky Hammers, developing underneath the Asmodee digital license. And as you can probably guess, the game is about terraforming Mars. It's sort of, if you look at the board game instructions, it is pretty loosely based on Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy of books, which I find, they're amazing set of books. They're probably some of the best sci-fi, especially hard sci-fi that's out there about what it would really be like if we went to Mars and tried to terraform it. And this game is sort of based on that. It takes place, it's not really story-based, and that's where it kind of diverges from the novels, but it's very much about terraforming Mars, what it would be like in kind of a realistic scale. And so it's pretty amazing. It is competitive, but like I said, one of the things I like about it is it's friendly competitive. You're not really going to be able to do a whole lot to really mess with other people. There's some things that are built into the game to make new players feel really welcome and keep them on an even ground with veteran players, which is really cool. Every time, and the nice thing about the digital format is when you start it up, it automatically prompts you and says, "Hey, this is a new game. You want to start the tutorial?" Now, of course, it didn't do that this time because it's not the first time I've logged in, but I will start the tutorial just to kind of give you an idea, take a look at it from a new player. It is a little daunting at first. There's going to be a lot of numbers and everything all around the readout, the head, the HUD. I may have to move my face, my insert, if it's in the way of anything. But there's a lot going on the screen, but I guarantee you it's really not that complicated, and it won't be very many rounds before you'll totally get this game and you'll understand how to play it. You do have the option, once you finish the tutorial, of setting up a game by yourself. There's these really cool solo challenges that you can challenge yourself with, just if you're playing on your own. There's local co-op, and then, of course, there's online... I'm sorry, not local co-op, local multiplayer, as well as online multiplayer, so you can challenge your friends if you have copies of the game. I will say I think the game is a little expensive. It is, especially for a digital board game adaptation. I think that the cost is, let's see, I'm not sure what the new cost is. It is actually $25, which is kind of steep for an online digital board game. But I guarantee you that there are a lot of really cool things that are available, especially if you have other people that you can play this game with online. And of course it goes on sale quite a bit. It's on Steam. So it would be very easy to wait until it goes on sale. Definitely worth a cost. I'm not sure if it's worth $25, just because, again, it doesn't have a lot of flash to it for what it is, but for what it does have, which is a digital port of a board game, it's really cool. So we'll take a look at the tutorial. The tutorial takes place in 5 parts. And so we'll kind of look at game structure first, but basically what you need to know is that you're a corporation, and you're competing with other corporations to help terraform Mars in order to make it habitable so that people won't have to live in domed cities any longer. And to do that, you have to contribute to 3 factors on the planet, and so we'll talk about that here when we get into game structure. Preparing for arrival. Welcome to Terraforming Mars. In Terraforming Mars, you control a corporation whose goal is to make Mars Earth-like enough to live freely on it. In order to win, you have to score the highest by accumulating a good terraforming rating, and that's basically your rating on how well you've terraformed the planet compared to other players. And then, of course, you have to accumulate victory points in other ways as much as possible before the game is over. Currently, your terraforming rating is always displayed on the left, and of course, you can't see it on my display. I'll have to shrink the window a little bit in order to be able to show it. I'll move it to the right a little bit. But as you can see, the terraforming rating is always listed on the left. Right now, my terraforming rating is 23, and my enemies, or my opponent... Oh no, I'm 20, which is on the top, and my opponent, who's purple, has a terraforming rating of 23. So that doesn't necessarily mean they're winning, because like we said, there are 2 ways to win. One is terraforming rating plus your victory points. And you can always see your victory points if you look down on the bottom right. I'll show you where that is later when I can actually move my cursor and have it appear on the screen. Here we go. So down here is where the victory points are, and as you can see, I don't have any yet. So right now my victory points total are just my terraforming rating, which is 20. Everybody starts at 20, and there's a reason why, is because basically your terraforming rating is like your income. It's your generational income. Every round is a new generation, which is crazy if you think about the time that you actually that a game actually spans. So every turn or every round is a generation, which 8 to 10 years passes by. And so everybody starts out at 20, so you have a basic minimum income of 20 every round. You can increase your terraforming rating by increasing global parameters. In other words, the 3 factors that have to be increased in order to make Mars habitable. Or you can play certain cards that just increase your terraforming rating straight up. Victory points, like we saw here down at the bottom, they're displayed. They can be earned by playing cards, certain cards, placing tiles on Mars, or claiming milestones and winning awards. So there's certain milestones and achievements you can purchase that also give you victory points if you've made a certain, if you've achieved a certain high score in some area. The game ends when all 3 global parameters have been met. So, for example, on the right-hand side here, you can see that I have to raise, on the left-hand side, you see that there's a brown, kind of orangish bar, which is my oxygen. And I've got to raise that to 14%, as you can see here. On the right, there's the temperature. That has to be raised to 8 degrees Celsius. And then on the bottom here, you see this blue hexagon with oceans. There have to be 9 ocean hexes placed on the Terraforming Mars map. And that means there's enough ocean that can actually produce clouds, and there can be rain and atmosphere. And so it's pretty cool how realistic it is as far as what it would take to make Mars habitable. These certain parameters have to be slowly built up over the course of many, many generations in order to make that happen. Global parameters are shared amongst all players, which means everybody is trying to raise these at the same time. So obviously, if you're someone who can raise oxygen, if you're competing with someone else who also is good at raising oxygen, both of you together will have to split those increments, so you won't get quite as many points as if you were the only person raising oxygen. So it's a good idea to try to figure out a niche that no one else is going to compete with you at. But they are shared among all players. If you raise a global parameter, it can give you sometimes at certain points an immediate bonus by that player who just increased it. The first global parameter is oceans. You raise the ocean level by placing an ocean tile somewhere on the planet. In total, there needs to be 9 placed, and once those 9 are placed, you don't place any more oceans. Oxygen is raised by placing greenery tiles on the planet, or certain cards also raise the oxygen. The oxygen needs to be increased to 14, and right now we're at a starting level of 0. So we've got to go up 14 steps. When you reach 8%, whoever does that step increases the temperature for free. So it's another parameter. So in other words, if you're the person who raises the oxygen from 7 to 8, you also get an extra terraforming point because you raise the temperature by 1 as well. The last global parameter is temperature. You raise the temperature level. Yeah, there's a lot to keep your eyes on for sure. Like I said, stay with me. Once you kind of start seeing, there's actually once we get past a few of the starting stats, it's actually pretty easy gameplay wise. The last stat is temperature. You raise the temperature with certain actions and cards. You need to increase the temperature from negative 30 degrees, and it's starting at negative 28, up to 8 degrees Celsius. But the steps are not singular. They're in 2-degree increments. And so you'll notice that it goes from negative 28 all the way up to positive 8. And there's certain rewards you get if you increase it to certain steps. For example, when you get to 24 or 20, you raise the heat, your heat production. When you raise it to 0, you get to place an ocean for free because you raise the temperature so much that it automatically unfreezes, thaws out some ice, some water, and creates an ocean tile for you. The game is divided into generations, so as you can see, we're on generation 3. I think what they've done is they've sped forward the game 3 rounds. So we're on generation 3. The temperature's been raised up a little bit. 1 ocean has already been placed. At the beginning of every turn, you get project cards, or I'm sorry, every generation. You get project cards, and then at the end of each generation, you're going to get resources based on what your production levels are. Every round, or every generation, has 4 phases to it. A couple of the phases, or a few of the phases, are really short, and so you'll spend a lot of time on one of the phases, but not very much on the other. The first phase is the player order phase, where the player order will be determined. Then you have the research phase, where you can buy cards, new production cards. And then the third phase, which is the longest phase, will be when players take turns taking actions. And then finally, you'll get production based on your production level, and you'll get resources. So the first phase is pretty easy. It's the player order phase. The player who is first becomes the last player. So that's why purple is second position right now, because everybody moves up by 1 place, and the first player becomes the last. So in other words, everybody usually gets a round it's kind of switches every other turn. But if one person keeps staying ahead of the game and ends up being first player again, then they still have to be the last player. So it doesn't pay to stay too far ahead all the time in this game, because you'll end up being last player and get the last pick of actions. Next comes the research phase. So this was the second phase, as you remember. During this phase, you can buy new project cards. So these cards will go into your hand. They cost 3 mega credits. That little ME sign is mega credits. And so mega credits are basically the money of the game, and that's what you mostly spend to buy projects, although some projects have additional costs besides money. But mega credits are something you really have to manage. You get a new injection of mega credits every round, but you have to be careful to be really frugal with the money, because it doesn't come back as fast as you can spend it. So, and this is the first phase where you can actually spend a lot of money and not realize it. So the first phase is I get 4 cards. I can choose any card to buy it. Now remember, this is the tutorial, so they're kind of picking cards for me right now. So it's wanting me to select Underground City. And as you can see, you can get an overview of the project. Normally I can click on it and zoom in and have it explain what these different symbols mean on the card. But it's just wanting me to select it and buy it. And as you can see here, it's telling me, hey, you're going to spend 3 mega credits if you buy this card. And so I'll do that. Apparently I'm only buying 1 card. So once everybody has a chance to buy cards, then you enter the action phase. In this phase, you're going to use all of your resources that you have available to you. And down here on the bottom left, these are all of my resources that I have currently. I can buy cards and take different actions during the action phase. I can perform as many actions as I want, terraforming Mars, increasing my score, whatever I can to try to get ahead. Obviously my player board is here at the bottom. It indicates my resources here at the bottom. I'm going to use these for actions in the game. In the brown boxes, if you can see the little numbers above the in the brown boxes above the resources, this is my resource production. This is basically telling me, a readout telling me, hey, this is how much you're going to produce at the end of every round. So as you can see, I'm not in a positive, I'm kind of in a 0 state for everything except for energy. And for energy, I'm producing 2 every round, which is one of the reasons why I have 2 in my resource pool here. And energy is great. It can be used to spend on different things, different items, different actions. And every round right now, my production, it's going to produce 2, which is pretty good. That's not a bad production to start off with. But as far as the other production, I'm not gaining anything in any of the other resource types. The first resource is mega credits. This is the main currency that you're going to be using to buy and play project cards and use standard projects, which are basic projects that are available to everyone. At the beginning of every generation, you're going to get an injection of more mega credits based on your terraforming rating, plus whatever is in this brown box here for mega credits production. So this is the kind of crazy part of the game, is you have to increase your terraforming rating, not only because it affects your victory points, but it also directly affects how much income you're going to have every round. Plus, at times, you'll have the opportunity to increase the production value of your mega credits, which is not going to affect your score, but it will affect how much income also you're going to get every round. Alright, so I can now perform 2 actions per turn. So during your turn, you aren't going to be able to do all the actions you want. You have to pick to either do 1 or 2 actions, or you can pass if you can't perform any actions because you don't have any resources left. I think this is one of the coolest part of the games, because sometimes it will seem really tempting to just try to cram as many actions as you can into your turn. So some people would say, well, why would I ever not do 2 actions if I have them? Well, there's a good reason why you might want to spread them out. If you don't spread out your actions and you end up having to pass really early, something may happen in the game that will make it easier for you to possibly be able to take a different action than the ones that you've been taking. So sometimes taking only 1 action, even though you could take 2, is a smarter decision. If you played one action, you can then skip your action, but if you decide to skip both of your actions, you have to pass, and once you pass, you can't go any more during that generation with any actions. You have to wait till the whole generation is finished with everybody else playing their actions and finishing their turns. But if you do an action, at least one action, and you skip the second action, you will get to go again when it comes back to your turn. So it's different than a pass. So right now, apparently, I'm passing. Oh, because I did an action, I guess? I don't know. This tutorial is a little... it kind of starts in the middle of things, so it's kind of hard to figure out exactly what's happening. Okay. So apparently we passed just to look at the different stages, but neither one of us really took a turn yet. So at the end of the action phase, once everyone has passed, then we go into the production phase, and like I said, this is when you get production based on the brown boxes. All of that is put into your resource pools, and remember your mega credits production is based on the resource pool for mega credits plus your terraforming rating. So as you can see, all of my production is increasing based on those factors, and now I have a lot of mega credits and a lot of other good resources. Once all of the global parameters are filled, the game will end at the end of the generation. So basically, once all three have been completed, everybody will get to finish that round, and then scoring will be conducted. Congratulations! That's the first step of that tutorial. So like I said, there's a lot. At the beginning, it's kind of overwhelming, and people, because there are so many different resources, people can kind of get overwhelmed by the look of things. But I guarantee you that most of the time, the only resources that will really matter at first will be mega credits. And then if there are any other resources that you have to worry about, they'll be in a really obvious place to look for where they might be helpful. Standard projects, I guess it's going into the standard projects, they're sort of like cards, project cards, but they're available projects all the time, and they're always available to all players. They can be used without limit, though usually they cost more than card projects. So they're always an option, and you'll notice that some things are pretty cheap, and you can actually make money. For example, if you have cards that you don't want to use, you can sell your patent to discard one or more cards from your hand, and you get a mega credit for every card you discard. So it's a good way to get rid of crappy cards if you end up with any in your hand. It wants me to do that now. So apparently I'm going to sell... Before selecting the cards you want to sell, you can view your hand and confirm which cards you want to sell, right? So I'm going to sell the first card. And remember, it's 1 mega credit per card. Once you made the choice, you sell, complete the transaction, and you get the money. Now you'll notice that that took one of my 2 actions. So standard projects are just like cards, because if you take them as an action, they take up one of your 2 actions. So selling patents, you either want to sell all your cards at once, or maybe you want to spread them out and sell them a little bit at a time to try to keep yourself in the game. Power plant is going to let you buy. If you notice, there's a little brown rectangle around this energy symbol. So you may be asking yourself, well, I know that the energy symbol or the lightning symbol means energy, but what does the brown hexagon around it, or the brown rectangle around it mean? Well, that means that it's going to increase your production, not your resource. So if you see a symbol without any brown rectangle around it, that means it's going to increase your resource in the pool itself. But if it has a brown rectangle around it, that means it's going to increase your production permanently for that resource, which is pretty awesome. Asteroid. You bring an asteroid down onto the planet, which of course raises the temperature because of the impact. And of course, raising the temperature is one of the global parameters, so therefore it increases your terraforming rating as well. Aquifers allow you to place an ocean tile, and that also is one of the 3 parameters, so that would let you increase your terraforming rating. And you'll notice that each of these have their cost at the right. So doing this is going to cost me 18. Apparently that's the action I'm going to do. When you place an ocean, they can be put on any designated spot on Mars. Now, you haven't seen the map yet, but it'll be really clear here in just a second. Ocean tiles are not owned by any player once they're placed, but other tiles, when you place them, are owned by you. You increase your terraforming rating by 1 for every ocean you place. Any tile that is later placed next to an ocean is going to get a bonus of 2 mega credits. Because you know, oceanfront property is worth more. So you get a bonus of mega credits by putting other tiles after the ocean next to the ocean, and you get a bonus of mega credits. So as you can see here, you see a handy dandy map of Mars where you can place hexes. You'll notice that some of the hexes have brown outlines or orange outlines, and some of them have blue. If they have blue outlines, that means that those are the only valid places to place an ocean. So normally, this is the tutorial, remember, it's making me put the tile here on this hex, but I don't have to in a normal game. If I don't want to, I can place it on any of these other hexes with a blue outline. Now, one of the other things to remember is when you place a hex, if it has a symbol on the inside of it, then you also get a resource of that type. So for example, if I place an ocean here, it's going to give me a greenery. And you'll notice that it doesn't have a brown rectangle around it, which means it's going to be a greenery for my resource pool. One plant resource. Let's see. Oh, and the other cool thing is, because I'm placing it next to an already existing ocean, it's going to give me 2 mega credits. So you see I got the 2 mega credits, I got the greenery for the plant, and now there's 2 ocean hexes on the board. 3 total, because I think there's one up north. Yeah, there's one here. And so there's only 6 more ocean tiles to place. And you'll notice, and you'll remember that I did use 2 actions to do both of those standard projects. So I have to actually end my turn. Now remember, I'm not passing because I did take an action. I actually took 2 actions. The purple player passed, which means he doesn't get any more turns this generation. I'm going to open up standard projects again for some reason. So the other standard project that you can do is place a greenery, and you notice there's 2 symbols here. One is the greenery hexagon, which means that you're going to place a greenery tile. That is going to, anytime you place a greenery tile, that increases the oxygen as well. And so you're going to get a terraforming rating increase. And remember, every terraforming rating increase is a profit increase. So is it going to, yeah. So it's going to make me place it. Anytime I place a greenery allows me to increase the oxygen level, and if I do that, then it increases my terraforming rating. Even if you get to the maximum oxygen level, you can still place more greenery tiles. You just won't get terraforming points, but there may still be a benefit for placing more greenery tiles anyway. Greeneries have to be placed next to another tile that you already own if possible. So the first hex you place can be placed anywhere on the board, but after that you have to play a greenery tile that connects to another tile you already own. And it's really easy to see which tiles you own because it'll have your player color border around the hex. And the other thing to remember is every greenery tile you have at the end of the game is going to give you a victory point that's going to add to your total victory. So as you can see, the only other tile I have on the map is this green tile here, this other greenery tile, and it's wanting me to place it here, which is actually smart because remember, if I place it next to 2 of these ocean hexes, that's going to give me 4 mega credits. And because there's 2 plant symbols in here, I'm going to get 2 plants for my resources. Alright, standard projects. We're going to go back to standard projects just to look at the last thing that you can do. So anybody who has 25 mega credits burning in their pocket, doesn't happen a lot, I promise you, can build a city anywhere on the map. Actually, I think you might still have to build this hex next to a tile that you already own, unless I'm wrong. But the other thing about building a city that's cool is you'll notice that it increases not your mega credits, but your mega credit production level, because it's got the brown rectangle around it, right? So don't forget that. That's actually better than increasing and just giving yourself 1 mega credit. It's like a permanent +1 income every generation. So it wants me to do that now. You'll notice I spent the big money. Okay, so cities can be placed anywhere on Mars, but you can't place 2 cities next to each other because everybody's got to spread out a little bit. You can't have overcrowding on Mars just yet. But remember that at the end of the game, the important things about cities is that for every greenery that's adjacent to them, because obviously they want to be next to green, you're going to get a victory point. So the idea is to either place a city and then surround it with greenery, or place a city that's already surrounded by greenery. And remember that even if other players have placed greenery, you still get extra victory points because it's a green adjacent tile, even if it's owned by another player. Once you place a city, it will also be owned by you, so you'll see a little green outline around it once I place it. And because I'm placing it in this hex, I get 1 plant resource, as you can see. And remember that I'd also increased my mega credit production, so I now have 2 production in mega credits per generation. So we finished this step of the tutorial. Congratulations. Next we're going to go to project cards. Now they're going to explain what the cards mean. The cards are a big part of the game. You have them in your hand. You got to figure out when to spend them, which ones to buy first. Some of them combo really well with each other, and so they're a huge factor of the game. This really is very much a card game, I think, even though there is a board to it. You're not really doing anything except placing stuff on the board, but it's the cards that kind of bring life to everything, and you kind of create an engine with them. So we're going to start the game at the very beginning. So this is the first thing that will happen in the game before you even start playing, is you're going to select a corporation. Every corporation you select determines your starting resources as well as bonus abilities. So this is one of the things that's amazing about this game, is you can play completely different corporations. There's tons of them in the game. I think there might be maybe 20 at least. Every corporation is completely different as far as its special abilities, its special powers, its starting credit, but yet every time I play this game, it's very balanced. No game has ever really seemed to be carried away by any player. The other thing that's really cool is, if you're a starting player, you always they always recommend that you start with a beginning corporation. It's called the beginner corporation because it gives you a pretty good boost to your starting credits, and you get a huge amount of cards to start with. And so that really gives, I think, beginning players a really big advantage over the other players who may have had some experience. And so there's a lot more, I think, flexibility as far as what you could possibly do. Because as you know, new players, when they start playing, they may not have any idea what kind of engine to build, what kind of combos to do. And so this gives them a lot of breathing room to kind of experiment and try new things, even if maybe a couple of them might not be successful. So at the start of the game, you may be saying to yourself, wait a second, I thought you said there were a ton of corporations. That is true, but at the beginning of the game, it's going to randomly give you 2 corporations. But if you're a beginner player, you always have the option of playing the beginner corporation. And at the top, it always says what the name of the corporation is, and then it also has an explanation for what their powers are. And as you can see, the beginner corporation is pretty simple, much simpler than the other corporations. So there are a lot of different corporation options, but you're only going to get 2 randomly drawn at the beginning of each game. Wayland Yutani Corp, yes, exactly. No reason why not. They could harness the power of the xenomorphs, for sure. So I believe it's going to have me pick the beginner corporation. Every corporation has starting resources, which you can see here. Plus, sometimes you have starting cars, or you might have another benefit, like this Tharsis Republic gets 40 credits plus a starting city, which is pretty cool. For now, we're going to choose a beginner corporation because, again, it makes it pretty easy. Basically, the only thing about the beginning corporation is that you start out with 42 credits and you have 10 starting project cards. That's all you have to worry about. So I got all of these cards. So now what it wants me to do is open my project hand, so I'll be able to look at all the project cards I have. Project cards allow you to improve your corporation's situation in order to terraform Mars more efficiently than your opponents. They can give you different kinds of benefits, like for example, they might raise your resources in a certain resource, or give you resources directly. You can also gain actions that you can do at later points. So they give you more options for actions every turn. They let you place tiles, they let you increase a global parameter, which of course increases your terraforming rating, which is your income and victory points at the end. So there's a lot of things that they do. There's a lot of combos you can create. You can buy new project cards during the research phase. Remember, that's the second phase. So you'll get new cards every round, or at least the option to buy them. You can always skip buying them if you feel like you've got plenty of cards in your hand right now, or if the cards that you drew don't really seem tempting. And so you will have a chance to get new cards to replenish these ones. Also, there's certain actions that you take that will also give you project cards. So one of the project cards here, we're going to take a look at in detail. This is what a project card looks like in detail. You can click on any card and zoom in on it. There's three kinds of project cards, and you can tell by the color. This one's a green card, which are called automated. There are event cards, which are red, so they'll look very red on the borders. And then there's active cards, which are blue, and basically I just call them action cards because they basically give you a permanent action that you can do for the rest of the game once you buy it. Green cards are cards that are immediate effects, and then the only other thing that's different from a red card is that you get to keep what is up in the upper right hand corner called a tag. We'll talk about that in a second. On the top of the card on the left, you'll see the cost. That's how much that's how much it costs to put this project into play based on mega credits. On the other side are the different tags that you get. So you'll notice on this tag there's a little greenery or plant icon. So you'll get a green tag, which makes sense because I'm adapting lichen to this environment, and so therefore that's a green project. And so that'll give me a green tag. Now you may be asking yourself, what are green tags? Well, tags are very much like traits in other card games. And what they do is they let other cards play off of them. So if you have, say, 2 greenery tags, that might let you play a more powerful green card that has a tag requirement. And so we'll kind of see those come up later. As it says here, they can be affected or can affect other cards. In the middle of every card, it shows you what the effect of playing this project is going to be. So as I said earlier, anything with a brown rectangular around it or square is going to increase my production of that resource. So this is going to increase my plant production so that I get 1 plant every round, every generation from that point on for the rest of the game. So it's pretty cool. And then just in case you don't understand the symbols, at the very bottom of the card it explains verbally what that means. You can always click on the information button here, which is pretty handy to view the full description of the card. But it's not letting me do that in the tutorial. Green cards are automated cards that allow you to perform immediate actions. Use this card to increase your plant production. So I purchased it, spent the money. As you can see, my greenery production went up by 1. Now you'll notice that was my first of 2 actions. So as you can see on the left here, I've done action 1 of 2, and it's wanting me to know what I want to do for my second action. So I could pass now or skip my second action, but it wants me to open up my projects, and I'm going to select this shipyard. You'll notice this card is very similar. It's a green, quick, immediate effect card. The cost is up in the top left. It's 15. You'll notice there's 2 tags here. There's one that looks a little bit like Jupiter, and then another that is it's a space card. Basically, is what the star symbol means. It's something that I'm building in space, which makes sense. It's a Vesta shipyard. I'm building a shipyard. The cool thing about it is that it's going to increase my titanium, which is the star resource. We haven't really talked about that much yet, but it's going to increase my titanium production by 1, and you'll see why that's cool. But the big thing they wanted to show us about this card is you'll see there's a big circle with a number inside of it. That is the international symbol for victory points. So anytime you buy some cards, I wouldn't say anytime, but sometimes when you buy cards, not only do they give you a cool instant effect or an action, but they also could add to your total victory points at the end of the game, and those victory points will always be listed at the bottom of your screen. Playing this card is going to increase titanium production by 1, as well as give me VP. So I'm going to use that. I have no actions left, so I'll have to end my turn. So purple passed, and it's back to me. So I'm going to take a look at some more projects. And as you can see, all the projects are highlighted with whatever color that they are. The green ones are, now I can't even remember what the title of that type of card is, but we're going to look at, I think they're immediate effect cards. Now we're going to look at the red cards. These are event cards that allow you to perform immediate actions. So basically, red cards are going to be hidden from your opponent after you play them. So you do have to show them to your opponent so they know what you played, but then you kind of hide it so that they can't see. In the long term, they may not be able to remember all of the red cards that you played, which can be important if you want them to kind of forget what your total victory points are. So you'll notice a lot of other things look similar. There's the cost in the upper left, there's the tag, but you'll notice all of the red cards are going to have the same tag, which is the down arrow. What that means is it's a reminder to put your card face down, and it technically doesn't count as a tag for anything. So like I said, that's the big difference between red cards and green cards. Red cards are immediate effect event cards, but they have no tags. Green cards are also immediate event cards, but they have a tag that you get to keep. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. So it wants me to go ahead and buy this. Now this is cool. This symbol here in the middle, this red globe symbol, means that it's going to increase my terraforming rating, which, like we said, is not only victory points, but also my generational profit that I'm going to, or basically my income. So I'm going to go ahead and buy this. So basically releasing inert gases is really helping to terraform the planet. Probably to help create an atmosphere, warm the place up. So as you can see now, I need to fix I know next time what I did is I think I started the game, I started OBS in a different resolution than I should have. Let me see if I can change that, actually. I don't think I can inside the game. That's alright. Well, we'll get it fixed next time. But you'll notice now I have a terraforming rating of 22, which means that starting in the next generation, I will go last. Unless before the... Yeah, because he passed. So because I have more points than he does, he'll get to go first next round. Just a little reminder that that's going to happen. Yeah, releasing inert gas. Some people are really good at that. Alright, so now I'm going to be selecting another red card. Now, you'll notice before I selected this card, it was kind of blanked out. It was kind of dimmed. You couldn't really... It looked like it was not a card I can play. And you're right, because if you try to click on this, it's grayed out. I can't play it. Well, the reason why that is because some cards have a requirement, and that is listed up here next to the mega credit cost. And you'll notice that this says thermometer minimum -8 degrees Celsius. So if you're thinking what I'm thinking, that means that this requirement of this card means I can't do this project until the temperature has reached a minimum of -8 degrees Celsius. And right now, we're at -30. There's no way I can have some permafrost extraction going on until I raise the temperature a lot more. So there has to be a minimum of 8 degrees Celsius temperature, and you'll notice that the text is down here to remind you too, in case you don't remember what the symbol means. But that's the reason why this card is not unlocked. I can't use this card until I raise the temperature. So this is one of the cool things about this game, is the global parameters also define which projects can be played, and so you may have a really great card that requires you to push the temperatures up, or get some more oceans out, or raise the oxygen level before you can play them and reap the benefits of them. So I have to wait to play this card. And then you can always click on the arrow here to go to the next card. Now this is one, as you can see, it's not grayed out. I can play this card. There is no requirement up here, although I do have to have the mega credits to play it. Some cards will allow you to place tiles. So anytime you see a hexagon symbol like this, it's going to allow me to place a tile. Now this tile is not going to be greenery, it's not going to be an ocean, it's going to be a volcano tile. So for some reason I've broken through the crust and created some lava flowing, which is going to obviously raise the temperature. So as you can see, I'm creating somewhat of a volcanic eruption. So I'm going to place that volcano somewhere on Mars. Then I'm going to raise the temperature by 2. So that's what's awesome about that is I also, every time I raise the temperature, I also raise my terraforming rating that much. So it's going to go up by 2 also. So I'm going to go ahead and use this. Now, one of the requirements is that I have to place this tile on certain mountains. So in other words, to break into the lava, I had to access it through a mountain. And so I only have a few choices, and it'll always highlight those for me. So I'm going to put it on Archibong. And now you can see I've got a permanent volcano here now. And you'll notice it's also highlighted in green, which means I do own it. And so later on I might be able to get some kind of victory points based on it. And because I did 2 actions, I have no actions left, so I'll end my turn. And remember, since he already passed, my opponent does not get to go, and I get to keep playing actions until as long as I want, until I run out of money, or I just decide to pass. So I'm going to open up my project cards, and we're going to take a look at blue cards. Blue cards are what are called active cards. They give you actions or effects that are available for the rest of the game. So the cool thing about them is, at the beginning of the game, the only other actions you can really do are project cards or standard projects, and there's a few other things you can do. But playing blue cards really increases the variety of types of actions that you can do. And it always explains really clearly on the card what the actions are. So as you can see, everything looks the same on this project card. You got the cost in the top left, the tags in the top right. So tags do count on blue cards. So you'll see I've got a Jupiter symbol here, and then it's a space tag also. Over here on the left, you'll see there are victory points. Now, what does this mean? Well, at the end of the game, I get 1 point for every Jupiter tag card I have. Now, that means any green cards or any blue cards that have this tag on them increases my victory point by 1. So that's pretty amazing. And so that's where you can start seeing the kind of combinations that can come up in this game, basically by having those tags out. So the other thing that's cool about the ocean or the blue action cards is it will tell you what action you're going to get. So this is water importing from Europa. So what this tells you, and it explains really clearly, you can always hit the info button if some of the instructions are cut off to see the details. So for every 12 mega credits in the future I can pay, I can place an ocean tile, which is pretty cool. I'm importing water from Europa and pouring it on the surface and making an ocean. It costs me 12 mega credits to do that. Now remember, that costs an action, and it costs me 12 mega credits. But if you think about it, that's actually cheaper than the standard project of putting an ocean on the surface. I can't remember how much it cost, but I think it was in the 20s. So this is about half the cost of placing an ocean as the standard project. And so the other thing about actions is that each action can only be used once per generation. So I couldn't do this multiple. I couldn't spam this and just pour out a bunch of oceans. I can only do it once every generation. So unfortunately, I couldn't pour a bunch of oceans if I had a ton of money. I can only do 1 per round. I explained the victory points already. At the end of the game, I'll get a victory point for every jovial tag I have on here. Or Jovian tag, sorry. This also has a space tag. Now, what did the space tag mean? Besides adding and making combos with other cards, anything that has a space tag, I can use titanium. Remember that star resource I talked about really quickly earlier? You can use titanium to reduce the cost. For every titanium in my resource pool I spend, I can decrease my mega credit cost of this space card by 3. Isn't that amazing? So some resources, building them up, can actually decrease or give you a discount on projects. So I'm going to, you'll notice I have 5 titanium here. If I increased and used all 5 titanium, that's a decrease of 15. So that's going to bring the cost, as you can see down here, to 10. So it's a pretty cheap card now. And so that reduces my titanium to 0 and my mega credits by 10. So now I'm going to take a look at my action cards again, my project cards. So I'm going to click on Immigrant City, even though I know I can't play this card. Basically, this card doesn't have an action on it, it has an effect. And so what it basically says is that if a certain action happens, I'm trying to figure out what this means. Oh, okay. So if anybody, so the red little border around this hex means, so this is the international symbol for cities, and a red border around this means that any player, so in other words, if any player plays a city in the future, that increases my mega credit production by 1, which is pretty amazing if you think about it, because every player in the game, the more players you have, the more cities everybody's going to be building and cramming onto Mars. And every time, if I was to play this card, every time somebody does that, I would increase my own production of mega credits by 1. That's pretty amazing. And that's what the immigrant city is, right? They provide cheap labor for these cities. The only problem is that to do that, I have to decrease my energy production by 1 and my mega credit production by 2. So what I'm kind of doing is I'm investing in this immigrant city to get it started, but I'm hoping that it'll turn a profit in the end and raise my production back up so I'm not losing what I had to shell out to begin with. The problem is that I don't have I can't decrease my production of energy because I only have 0. I'm at 0, so I can't decrease it as to pay for the requirement. That's why I can't do it. And of course, my mega credit production could be decreased. It can go down to -5. So I could decrease below 0 for only mega credits. Everything else cannot be reduced below 0 production. And yes, if you do reduce your mega credits to negatives, it does take mega credits away at the beginning of every generation. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next card since I can't pay for this one. This is a building tag. So what this tag means up here on the right is that I can use my other resource, which is steel. That's what this hammer means. I can use steel if I have any in my resource pool to pay to decrease the cost of this card. So normally this would cost me 8, but I can use steel to decrease it by 2. For every steel I spend, I get to decrease the cost by 2. So I'm going to decrease it because I have 5. I'm going to decrease it by 4, which will make this card free. So you can reduce the cost down to 0, which is pretty awesome. All right. So next the next phase we're on is additional actions. I'm going to take a look. Okay, so I've got 2 more tutorial stages here. I'm going to see if I can get through at least 1 more. And we're going to be looking at the other types of actions that you can take. For example, stealing resources, converting plants into greenery and heat, and those kind of things. There's a lot of little extra things, but again, they don't really come into play that often, and they're pretty obvious when they do. So this tutorial is going to show you what these additional actions are and certain rules about them. So you'll see down here at the bottom, I've accumulated 8 resources of plants, and now this little bar has popped up here. What this means is that now that I have 8, every time you gain 8 plants, you can convert them into and plant them on the surface of Mars and make them into a greenery tile, which, as you remember, placing a greenery tile allows you to increase the oxygen by 1 step if it still can be raised, and that increases your terraforming rating, income, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So it reduced my plants to 0, and now I can place a greenery tile anywhere here. These are my available spaces because they're the only ones that are next to me. These ones not here are not available because they are water hexes. And I can't place over here because these are purple players' tiles. So I can only place here or here. So I'm going to place here so I can get this steel. So as you can see, that gave me a steel here. The other type of action that's available down here at the bottom of this bar is heat. If you build up enough heat, which is this resource here, and it's 8, just the same as greenery tiles, once you build up 8, I can convert them into increasing the temperature, which makes sense, right? If I'm converting energy into heat, then I'm raising the temperature of the planet, and that's what's raising the global parameter of temperature, and I get to increase my terraforming rating by 1. Now I have no more actions left, so I have to end my turn because I did 2 actions. Purple keeps passing. What a loser. Yeah, thanks, Messenger. I know my screen is off because I accidentally used the wrong resolution when I started OBS, and so I'm just kind of playing through it tonight, and then I'm definitely going to fix it next time, make sure everything's set correctly. But yeah, I've got a giant screen here. I'll probably just shrink it just to make sure we can kind of see everything at the same time. Let's see if I can do it and still be visible. There we go. Alright, so it'll be a little bit smaller tonight, I apologize, but we're just kind of looking at the rest of these tutorials. So, at the bottom on the right here, we have the Effects tab. Any effects that you get from blue action cards and your corporation are listed here. So I'm going to go into the Effects tab. So you'll notice that these are all the different kinds of actions I can do. These are all the kinds of effects that happen. And remember, I played earlier, it looks like I played something where every time someone builds a city, I get 2 mega credits because I built some rovers, or I have a rover construction company. So these are things that happen automatically. They can only be triggered by other people's actions. And so you can scroll over any of those if you have them. They're actually nothing that you can actually click on, but they're just there for your reference. So basically, like I said, I get 2 mega credits every time a city tile is placed. And the red border means that if any player does that. So let's see if that happens. I'm going to build a city, which should give me that boost. So I'm going to build a city next to 2 green, which will give me, yep, I got 2 increase. It also increased my production because of my card effect. So as you can see, you can start building up some really cool combos that either you can trigger or have other players trigger. And it can lead to your terraforming rating or mega credits increasing really quickly eventually. Next to the FX tab, you have the Action tab. Actions are, remember, when you play blue cards, those become permanent actions, and they're always listed here on this Action tab. If I hover over them, they can all be explained. You can see the explanation for them. And then if they are available, the reason why these are grayed out is because they're either not available because I don't have the resources for them, or I've already used them once per generation. So you can only use them once per generation, and then I have to use something else. So if I use this action, I convert 8 heat into an automatic terraform rating increase. Now remember, I could spin this 8 to increase temperature, so then which would also increase my terraforming rating. Well, you might be asking yourself, wait a second, why wouldn't I just increase heat and increase temperature directly? Well, you could, but let's say later on in the game, once the temperature is maxed out, this action would still be available to give you a terraforming rating boost, so you have extra heat to spend and something to spend it on later once the temperature's been maxed out. Many actions allow you to trade a resource for an advantage, such as increasing terraforming rating. So I'm going to use this. So I spent 8. I increased my terraforming rating by 1. And I have to end my turn. The other player passed. So now I'm going to open and look at my other actions. So this action does, there's certain cards that add certain little markers onto things. Like, for example, they accumulate resources on top of them. So, for example, I played this blue tardigrades card. Every time I use it, it puts a little microbe on the card, and then usually what happens is it's going to give me victory points at the end of the game. If I can just keep pumping that action, then I can keep adding tokens onto it, resources, microbes, and that will eventually increase my victory points at the end of the game. And then I just confirm to add a microbe to this card. And you'll notice here at the bottom it says, at the end of the game, I'm going to get 1 victory point, which is that circle, for every 4 microbes that are on the card. So if I keep accumulating microbes, right now there's nothing on them. But in the future, if I keep putting microbes on them, eventually I can get victory points with them. And then I'm going to open the action tab again. Some actions allow you to steal from other players to gain the resource. So for example, if I did this action, you'll notice there's the red border, which means I can steal a microbe from any player's card. So this is the one way where you can really screw over other players and interact with them. Otherwise, you're kind of playing without having to worry too much about other players. But in this case, I can actually steal microbes. If other players have microbe cards, I can steal microbes from them in order to add a microbe to my own card, because my ants are eating everything for themselves. So I can steal a microbe from the card I already played it on, which was the tardigrade action last time. And that's what it wants me to do. And then I confirm. And that was my first action. So basically I got some microbes for myself. So this action lets me add a microbe to this card or remove 2 microbes from this card to raise the temperature. So basically, greenhouse gas producing bacteria, I can add microbes to this card, and then for every 2 microbes, I can raise the temperature by 1, which of course is what I want to do to increase my terraforming rating. And then it just wants me to confirm that. And you can see the temperature went up, and I gained a terraforming rating. So last tutorial is scoring. So scoring is actually pretty easy. There's a couple things you can do to increase your score. Besides obviously increasing your terraforming rating always increases your score directly, plus it gives you profit. But there's other ways to gain victory points. One of them are milestones, which is at its top tab up here. If you meet the criteria of a milestone at any point, you can claim it by paying 8 mega credits. Now that does take one of your actions. They can only be claimed by 1 player, and only 3 of the 5 milestones can be claimed in total. So there's kind of a race. Whoever is the first person who can qualify for them obviously wants to buy them to keep someone else from buying them. Plus, you want to hurry and try to get the milestones purchased, because only 3 of the 5 are purchased, and that means every player in the whole game. So it's not 3 per player, it's 3 for all players. Once those are purchased, no one else can buy any more. So here are the milestones. The first is terraformers. So as soon as you have 35 terraforming points, that's the minimum requirement, you can purchase this for 8 mega credits. Once you do that, the prize is 5 victory points at the end of the game. And one of these will get filled up. So it's going to show us what that looks like. So I have 35 terraforming rating. I'm going to purchase this. And now, if I went back to the milestone tab, I would see that one of those 3 slots has been filled, and so you can always see what the current milestone capacity is at any time. Awards are the other way to increase your victory points. They're kind of cool because, unlike milestones, which guarantee you victory points, oh, there's a little milestone symbol up here too now, so you know there's 1 out of 3 that have been purchased. But awards are pretty cool because you purchase them, but then it's open for anybody to win until the end of the game. So they're kind of competitive, but someone has to purchase them and spend their good hard money doing it to even make them available to win. Only 3 of the 5 awards can be funded. In other words, 3 people are going to buy an award, and then none of the others can be purchased. And then whoever has the highest amount of whatever that reward is covering gets the victory points. It's pretty crazy. Actually, you get victory points if you're second place, but it's not as much as first place, which is 5. Second place gets 2 victory points at the end. Landlord is a reward given to the person who, at the end of the game, owns the most tiles in play. So remember when I said that when you play a tile, it has your border around it, and it's a good idea to keep track of that because some things can reward you for that? Well, this is one. If you get this reward, at the end of the game, you get extra victory points if you have the most tiles. Even if I'm the leader now, and I purchase this right now, which as you can see, it's highlighting it here, I have 9 and my enemy has 6, by the end of the game, they might overtake me and win this award. So just because I'm purchasing it doesn't mean I get those victory points right away. It actually doesn't happen until the end of the game, which allows other people to pass you by and try to beat you at your own game. When all global parameters have been maxed, so all three of these things are maxed out, temperature is maxed, oxygen is maxed, and oceans are maxed, the game is over, and it's going to add up the points. So everybody has to pass. So the first thing that happens is everybody gets to convert plants. If you have any leftover plants in your resources, you can convert them into greenery tiles for extra victory points. Because remember, you get points for every greenery tile you have. But I don't have any greenery resources, so I can't make any. Oh no, that was the enemy. I do have greenery resources, so I can convert them. And I just basically place them wherever I want. Remember that if I put them next to oceans, it gives me extra mega credits. So I'll just kind of place them. And also, if I put them next to my cities, that's going to give me extra points at the end of the game, too. So I'm going to put them next to my cities. Oops, I should have put that next to the ocean. Oh, well. So once you've converted all the possible plants you can, then it moves to the next step. So it's kind of nice to remember you don't have to use all of your actions to build greenery tiles at the end. Once this is done, points will be tallied to show who the winner is. First, everybody's terraforming rating is created in a bar. So right now I have 36, the enemy has 34. And remember, that's the terraforming rating that slowly gets built up by playing projects, completing global parameters, those kind of things. Then everybody is awarded victory points based on awards. 5 victory points are given to the first place winner of the award. Second place gets 2. And then if there's 2 players, actually, the second place doesn't get any, which sucks. So I got 5 victory points because I purchased that award for the most tiles. Next come the milestones. 5 victory points are given for every milestone player that claimed it, and those will be obvious early on in the game. As soon as they're purchased, you know who's going to win it, because that person purchased it. Which again, I purchased that only one. Then you get a point for every greenery tile, so it'll add those up. I had 9 and the enemy had 4. So once again, I'm kind of walking away with it here. Next, you're going to get cities. Cities' victory points are counted by the number of greenery tiles, whether it's enemy or mine. So for example, this city here is surrounded by 5 greenery. Even though one of them is an enemy greenery, I can still count it as a victory point. So that gave me 9 total victory points because I had a city down here that also had another 4 surrounding it. Next, you look at your cards, and you're going to get victory points for any cards that have victory points on them, which, as you saw earlier when we looked at project cards, some of them have automatic victory points that you'll get at the end of the game, and those are added now. And then finally at the end, whoever's left with the highest score wins the game. If 2 players have the same amount of points, whoever has the most mega credits is the winner. So it's always good to have a little bit of stockpiled mega credits just in case there's a tie, because you can break the tie with that. I won. All right. So the good thing is I won. That's the last tutorial. I'm going to try something out really quickly. I'm going to test this out. I'm going to try to start the game again. And the reason what I'm going to do that for is I'm going to try to see if I can get the make sure the stinking border is set correctly. All right. Maybe. All right. Well, it looks interesting. Victory, yes. Victory is ours. Um, so I did win the tutorial, but of course it's set so that I have to win. But what I'll do next time is I'll play a single-player game against an AI opponent. You can kind of see how the different mechanics work together when I actually have control over everything and what a game looks like. It's a lot cooler, more tactics, more combos, and I can show you that. One of the things I will be doing in some future games is in anticipation for whenever Jofos is able to play some co-op gaming, I will the week before log in and play the game in single player mode and see if I can get through it and hopefully win. And then Joe and I will meet online to play the co-op version, which will be kind of the streamlined. We'll just be looking at the co-op tactics and strategies. And so that way you can see the game back to back, once for the story, single player mode, and then once with co-op. And that way we'll kind of get through those quests with the new quest series that come out. And then there's even a new encounter challenge, which is pretty cool. I also saw in the news feed today that there's some changes that they're making purchase alternative arts for the card, so you can have like a different looking Aragorn background. If you don't like if you get tired of looking at the old Aragorn face, you can download and purchase a new one with Valor points, which is pretty cool. That'd definitely be something that I could spend Valor points on. But it'll be interesting to see how that kind of develops. And apparently they say they're also getting ready for another big update pretty soon. So if it's anything like Fantasy Flight release with their new booster packs, it's going to be hard to keep up, that's for sure. But we'll be taking a look at that maybe starting next week, or just kind of maybe the week before Jofos is going to be scheduled to come on again and play some co-op. I'll get on and play the Quest single player. So otherwise, come and check us out on Saturdays. We play table flipping board games. We play some really cool board games on Tabletop Simulator. Right now we're playing Pandemic Legacy, so it's been a lot of fun. We're getting close to winding that down, and so we're going to be talking about what are some possibilities for our next big campaign we might run as far as board gaming goes. So definitely tune in for that. Otherwise, I'll be back here next week with some more Terraforming Mars playthrough, or if Jofos is getting ready to come back on for some co-op, then I might be playing through the single player of Lord of the Rings. But I'll keep you up to date on Twitter. Hopefully be a lot better about updating you if there's any kind of emergencies or anything that come up. But otherwise, I'll see you guys next week. Later.